Welcome back everyone. In today's video, we are on to some more lighting upgrades. The first one is going to be the courtesy lights in the doors. Now we've got three options. The first is going to be a direct bulb replacement with our brighter LED bulb that will go into the factory housing. And then the next two options going to be full replacement housings. The first one's going to be a white, and then the second one's gonna be a red. So I will show you how to install the LED into the factory housing, and then I will show you the difference between all three after that. And then the next lighting add-on we're gonna be doing, I'm gonna be calling it phase one. That is going to be these ditch lights that we have, and you can see we've got the brackets, the lights. The wiring these came with is really short, so I'm gonna need to extend that. And I'm also gonna extend it enough in case I wanna move it to the front bumper or something later. I'm gonna have a lot of excess wiring to where I can kind of put them wherever I want. Since I don't know if this is exactly where I want them right now, this is just where we're gonna start with them because I've got a few other light options that I'm gonna be adding down the road. That'll be phase two. All three lights have a backlight function, so I'll be wiring all those together since I don't foresee myself wanting one backlight on without the others. All of these are gonna have three wires, power, ground, and then the wire for the backlight, which we're gonna be managing all that in our Auxbeam 8-switch panel here. I've had one of these in the past. They're a great, affordable option for anyone with multiple lighting upgrades on their vehicles. That way you can turn on whatever lights you want when you need them. And what I'm really excited about is what this is going to be installed into. And this is gonna be the OE panels, replacement panel that goes to the left of the steering wheel. Now, all you need to do is transfer over the clips on the back side, and then there's a piece of plastic that protrudes that you need to cut out, and I'll show you what that is when we get to it. But this panel is just gonna sit cleanly right in there, and then the factory switches are going to go in underneath here. This is gonna be a really slick setup. I'm really excited that this isn't gonna be in your face, and it's gonna be really accessible to the left-hand side of your steering wheel. We'll get to all that stuff later. So we will start with the courtesy lights, show you the difference between all three, and then we'll move on to the ditch lights. All right, so you're gonna want a pry tool or a flathead screwdriver so that you can get to the edge of this and then pry it out. And then all you need to do is unplug the connector there. So this center plastic piece here actually pops out so you can get to the light. You can usually just get your thumb under there and pop it out like that. And then you can get to the OEM halogen bulb and replace it with the LED. So careful with this. If you've had it on for a while, it can be hot. So keep that in mind. And then we've got our LED replacement. Just goes in like that. And then this angles back in. Looks good. So then we'll plug this in, just like that. So now I'll turn off the lights and show you the difference between the single LED replacements and then the full housings. Now before I get ahead of myself, I want to show you what the factory halogen bulbs look like. Now here are the single LED upgraded bulbs in the factory housing. And these are going to be the full replacement housings in white. So I'm going to try and do a couple comparisons just to show you the difference between the full replacement and the single LED. The single LED is a lot brighter than the factory halogen, but this is the full replacement in the front. And then this is going to be the single in the back. Hopefully kind of gives you an idea how much brighter the full replacement is there. So I'm going to go through all three options right now. So this is the factory halogen bulb. That is going to be the single LED upgrade. And then there is the full replacement. So definitely the brightest option out of the two options that we carry, but that gives you a general idea of how much brighter that is than the other two. And this is gonna be the last option that we carry, which are gonna be the red ones, which I personally run just because they're a little easier on my eyes at night and they don't attract bugs when we're camping, which is the main reason why I went with these. So now onto the ditch lights installation. I'm gonna start with replacing the OEM panel with the OE panels so that we can get the Auxbeam 8 switch panel in. So I'm just gonna kind of start prying around the bottom here. And then you'll want to unplug the connectors in the back. There's just the two. And then you'll want to swap these things over to the replacement panel, but this is going to be that plastic piece that we need to trim back, or actually just cut out, so that we have room for the panel and the wiring. I was hoping that this plastic would be soft enough to cut with a box cutter, but it's pretty hard. So I've got the Dremel here and I will cut this out with that. Right. I think that should be all it takes to get enough space for everything. So we'll test fit everything in there. So I'm just gonna do a little test fit just to see if it took off enough. And it looks like I need to actually take that down all the way. So I'll do that now. So I took that down to where it's pretty much flush with the backside. We'll give this another test fit, but I feel pretty good about it now. Yeah, that looks right. Cool, so now we'll swap over the buttons and then get the switch panel inside there. So here's the difference between the panels. The replacement has 3 slots, so I actually need to bring over this blank piece, put it there, along with the other buttons. So we'll do that now. And we'll need to take these off as well. So we'll just put these in the new panel. There it is. And then you'll just pop these off. Got all the clips and everything transferred over, and I've got the Auxbeam panel put in there. I didn't put any adhesive or anything on the back because it's really snug in this, so if I ever need to take it out down the road, it's not gonna be a pain to remove. So since I've got everything on here, you've got your harness that is gonna run from the panel underneath the hood. So I'll start snaking that through here. then we'll connect these together here. Push this panel back in.
Are you forgetting something, stupid?
Perfect. That's gonna look really good. Already does look good. So I'm gonna run the wiring harness underneath into the engine bay, and then we'll go from there. So the previous owner installed a light switch for the light bar in here, so kind of already have access through the firewall grommet. This is the excess wiring for the Auxbeam panel, and then you can see that grommet there, that wiring has been run through. So I'm going to run that cable through there, and then I will show you what the rest of the install looks like in the engine bay. And now you can see where the harness was pushed through. I'll just grab the excess wiring, pull it through here. So this is the remainder of the components with the Auxbeam kit. You've got 2 power cables. The short one's gonna go on top of this circuit here. The short one goes to the battery. Then the long one goes on the bottom here. The long one goes to the panel, the fuse panel for everything, and that connects there. You got a ground cable that's gonna connect there, and then the other end is gonna go to the battery or a good chassis mount. So either option is fine there. This little positive wire here is gonna connect on the end there, and then you'll connect an add a fuse to the end of this, a non-constant power supply like radio or USB that will shut off when the car is off. And then the last thing is going to be this spot here. That is gonna be for the harness that we brought in from the panel into the engine bay, so that will connect there. So we've got 8 positions here on the fuse panel. Those are gonna be for each switch on the switch panel. So I'm gonna install this in the engine bay, and then I'll give you a rundown of what that looks like after. All right, so as you can see, I've got the fuse panel for the Auxbeam installed. I actually secured it to the top of the fuse panel lid. So it's just gonna live here, and you can snake all your wiring through this little slot on the panel. But we've got the circuit here, we got the short wire going to the battery, got the long one coming around onto the panel, got the ground to the battery right here, and then from the switch panel inside, this is the wire for that. And then we got the power to the ACC fuse underneath the dash. So this part of the install is done. Now I'm going to install the brackets for the ditch lights, get the wires extended, and then figure out which slot I'm going to install those wires to here. So just a little heads up on the ditch light mount. If you are doing this by yourself, and depending on how the bracket's set up, do one of them first. I'm doing this one so I can angle the bracket out, and then I'm putting the bolt back in. So at least when I take this out, it's not just standing on its own. So that way it's kind of positioned, and then the hood doesn't come down onto the edge of the windshield. So I've got the ditch light mounts and the lights mocked up. I'll show you what we're working with here. I haven't really thought about aiming them or anything yet, since we're not quite there yet. They're pretty much touching the windshield. Just not ideal, just gotta go slow, and then they can rest there. One thing I ran into, this was the mounting bolt that they had originally to install on the mounts, and it was too long, so it was hitting this plastic piece down here. So they did include a shorter bolt, I'm assuming for this reason, and that's what I ended up using. But this was the wiring I was talking about earlier. They come with a plug, and then probably like 5 inches of wiring off that, and then stops. So I need to extend all this wiring so that I can get it to the fuse panel, and that's what I'll do right now. So I have all the wiring extended off of both lights. I added a lot of excess in case I wanted to have them down here in the future, but I've got other plans for that in our next video. So there's a lot of excess wiring. I'm most likely tucked back there. And as you can see, I've got that wiring over there kind of looped up front here. So everything has been buttoned up wiring wise. So now let's test out the switch panel. Hey there, Marnie. See how this looks and see if it works. That is a great sign. Got power to the panel. I've got the main ditch lights set up on 5 and then the backlight on 6. So let's test those out. All right, now I'm just gonna test out the backlighting and the lights just to see how they look. Make sure they work. All right, so that's a backlighting. I don't know how well you can see that. Yeah, looks pretty good. And then we'll test out the lights here. All right, nice. Those actually look pretty good. So I'll turn this around so you can kind of see what kind of light pattern they have and how they look. So here's the backlighting. Won't really do much. Nothing you can really see. And then there are both lights. Haven't really aimed them or tightened anything down yet, but as far as a ditch light goes, they seem like they're kind of in a good spot right now, honestly. Might take a little bit of tinkering, but so far so good. There you can see that backlight. It's pretty cool. We've got the ditch lights and the Auxbeam panel all finished up, and I'm really impressed with how everything turned out. The backlight on these looks really good. The light output and the color is better than I imagined. They do sit back towards the windshield quite a bit closer than I expected when the hood is open. I'm guessing it's just because of how deep these lights are. There's some other options out there, like Diode's got a little square pods. I'm sure those sit a lot further up to where they're not gonna be touching that. So just keep that in mind. I'm sure the ditch light mount also plays a factor into that. This one's pretty far forward, so I'd be really surprised if other mounts are even further than that. But one thing to note that I did during the install that I would recommend changing, I don't know if you can see it, but in the front of the fuse panel, on the Auxbeam fuse panel under the hood here, the slot that I have the wiring going into is in the front towards the battery. I should have turned that 180 so that it was further back and then I had more room to play with back here. It's not the end of the world. I might change that later. I know I do have it drilled to the fuse lid right now. It's not a big deal if I end up changing it down the road. So just keep that in mind. That's one thing I would definitely recommend if you're gonna be doing this. You can always play around with where that might go to, because on my last one I had a 6 switch and this box was a lot smaller. I just ended up bolting it to the side of the engine bay wall. So there's a few different ways you can do it. One other thing that I wish I'd done prior to today was just extending those wires. It took a little longer than I expected off camera, but not a huge deal. So I hope you guys also got a good idea of how those courtesy lights look. The halogen bulbs in the factory housings definitely don't do their job. So even upgrading to that small LED is a huge improvement. But if you're looking for something even brighter, the white option is a good one as well. And if you're like me, and you go camping a lot, and we're in Iowa, so there's a lot of bugs during the summer, that red option is gonna be a good one as well. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to email us at sales@cxmons.com or find us on social media and message us there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.